Stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now, let's go. I started to hear my own breath, loud, ragged, as if I'd sprinted up 3 flights of stairs. My vision tunneled. For a moment, the living room walls blurred, and my own heartbeat hammered in my ears. I struggled to focus on the present, but my thoughts splintered into flashes of memory. Maria Carter's laughter, the curve of her smile, the faint echo of vows we'd exchanged decades ago. My chest tightened as I fought to steady myself. I remember exactly when I started sensing something was wrong. Maybe it was the late nights, the subtle glances, or the gentle hum of her phone at odd hours. But it wasn't some grand revelation. It was a low, persistent dread. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Paranoia born from too many stressors at work. Then I noticed how often she mentioned Lauren, the hairdresser. That name came up with annoying regularity, always accompanied by a casual shrug or a half-distracted smile. For a long time, I simply waited for the feeling to pass, hoping it was just me being oversensitive. But the quiet tension in Maria Carter's eyes wouldn't go away. I started to pick up on how she'd slip out the door in nicer outfits, hair brushed to a shine, her perfume stronger than usual. She'd say she was heading to the salon, or meeting a friend, or just needed time to get out of the house. Soon, the nights she stayed out late increased, and her text messages seemed to fill every spare moment. That old, gnawing sense of anxiety burrowed under my skin. One evening, I saw a photo pop up on social media. Maria Carter and Lauren Pierce, hugging each other in front of the salon. The camera caught them mid-laugh, leaning in close, eyes lit with a bright, secret flame I recognized from our early years. Except now, it wasn't for me. I'd been with Maria Carter for 3 decades. We built our life in a suburban neighborhood near Seattle. We had the house, the 2 cars, the occasional weekends at a lakeside cabin. But that night, scrolling through that photo and reading the comments beneath it, "You two look amazing. Such a cute pair." My stomach twisted. I knew there was more beneath the surface. I tried to push it aside, bury myself in work, but suspicion and doubt took root. I'd lie awake listening for her footsteps, for the creak of the front door. When she finally came home, I'd pretend to be asleep, though every muscle in my body was tense. I could smell the faint trace of different cologne. Maybe Lauren's. I didn't dare ask yet. Eventually, I caved. I took a DNA test because some small voice in my head said, "This is bigger than you think." I remembered the months we tried to conceive, the years we raised our son together. But something about Maria Carter's self-assured distance made my gut churn. It felt impossible, but I had to know. I received the test results in a slim envelope. Inside, a few lines of text confirmed my darkest fear. He wasn't my biological son. That quiet, destructive truth cracked my world apart. I confronted her the same evening. "Maria Carter," I whispered, voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. "Tell me it's not true." She froze, then carefully set down her teacup on the kitchen counter. The porcelain clink echoed through the silence. "John," she said, not meeting my eyes. "It's true, isn't it?" My hands were shaking. I tried to steady them by gripping the edge of the counter. "He's not mine." The flicker in her eyes told me everything. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I saw that self-satisfied calm, as though she'd lived with this secret for so long she'd almost forgotten it could hurt me. "Yes," she finally whispered. And just like that, an entire lifetime felt like a lie. I struggled to breathe. The flickering overhead light made the room feel claustrophobic. She started to say something about how things had changed over the years, how our relationship had become routine. I couldn't absorb her excuses. My chest burned with a slow, suffocating fury. I needed air. I left the kitchen, stormed into the living room, and ended up by the fireplace. My breath rasped again, the same sound I'd heard moments ago. My lungs felt full of broken glass. She came after me, arms folded. "Let's talk," she said, voice oddly detached. Not a shred of real apology showed on her face. She looked more irritated than I'd found out. This doesn't have to be a big. I cut her off. A big what? A big deal. We've been married for decades, Maria Carter. We have a child. A child you let me believe was mine. Her eyes flickered. And you were a good father figure to him. It's not like. I slammed my hand on the mantel. Don't you dare tell me it's not a big deal. She stepped back, eyes narrowing. John, keep your voice down. My throat felt raw. I realized how close I was to losing control. I forced myself to inhale, exhale, to wrangle my anger back into a trembling silence. That night, I slept, or tried to, in the guest bedroom. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo, her and Lauren Pierce, or else I pictured my son's face. Part of me wanted to believe it was a mistake, that the test had been wrong. But the facts were there, and Maria Carter confirmed them. In the days that followed, I became a stranger in my own house. She moved about her routines with a kind of indifference, as if my discovery was a nuisance more than a tragedy. I walked around in a haze, inwardly seething, outwardly quiet. I remember telling myself, "Don't explode yet." My suppressed rage fed on itself, throbbing with every beat of my heart. I found myself going through old photos, remembering how my wife's smile once lit up my world. I remembered the day we brought our son home from the hospital, her expression so radiant, mine full of naive pride. Now that memory felt like a cruel joke. I started investigating, digging. I had the suspicion that Lauren Pierce was more than just a hairdresser. The more I searched, the more I realized how often they'd been together. Late phone calls, weekend getaways under the guise of hair expos, or business conferences. It fit together too neatly. I hated the sense that my entire life had become a puzzle I'd been too blind to solve. One evening, I followed Maria Carter, discreetly, so she wouldn't see me, and watched her drive to a secluded part of town. She parked near a small, no-frills motel. My stomach lurched. I stayed in my car, eyes locked on the entrance. She went inside. About 20 minutes later, Lauren Pierce emerged from another vehicle, walked in too. The sign above the office flickered with a half-burnt neon tube, and the sky was a dull, bruised gray as dusk settled. I sat there, motionless, for a while, imagining what was happening behind those walls. My mind conjured images I'd rather forget. I saw the intimacy, the closeness I used to have with Maria Carter, now shared with someone else. My jaw clenched until it hurt. Eventually, I left. Couldn't bear to wait until they came out, laughing or whispering. On the drive home, my hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. I felt numb and boiling at the same time. That was the night I decided. If I can't be the man she loves, I'll become the man she fears. But I kept it all locked inside, silent as the grave, wearing my usual mask of quiet frustration. I started playing the part of someone trying to reconcile, to understand, to keep the family intact. Meanwhile, the anger twisted in me like a coiled spring. I remember the first time I cornered her in the hallway. "Maria Carter," I said softly, "are you still seeing her?" She didn't flinch. Yes. A cold admission, no remorse. I expected tears, or at least a hint of regret. I got nothing. She stared me down with a look of bored pity. "We're connected in a way we never were, John. I'm sorry if that's hard to hear." My voice shook. "You're sorry." She turned to walk away. "I don't want to fight." Just like that, we ended the conversation. My rage bubbled, unspent, scalding my insides. The next few weeks blurred. I went through the motions at the office, smiled at colleagues, attended pointless meetings. I'd come home, and if Maria Carter was there, we'd exchange disinterested greetings. If she wasn't, I told myself good riddance, but I missed the illusion of having a real partner. That's when I took a step that seemed both insane and necessary. I started planning. Not immediate physical harm, no. something else, something more refined. At first, it was small. I changed the password on some of our joint accounts, opened new credit cards in my name alone, and quietly began transferring money. I visited a lawyer who specialized in property distribution. I did it all carefully, leaving no digital footprints she'd easily find. Was it revenge or self-preservation? Probably both. When Maria Carter told me she was heading to the salon one Wednesday evening, I forced a casual nod. "Sure," I said, as if everything were fine. But inside, I was coiling tighter. Moments later, I grabbed my keys and followed at a distance. I saw her car parked behind Lauren's salon. Lights off. The sign on the door said closed, but I could see two silhouettes through a gap in the blinds. My mind reeled with imaginations of them behind that locked door. I felt a surge of panic, a wave of anger so intense I nearly marched up and pounded on the glass. My breath started hitching again. I realized I was trembling. That's when I got back into my car and forced myself to drive away. My chest felt bruised, heart pounding like a bass drum. Back home, I couldn't sit still. I paced the living room, looking at photos of our family, of my son, of the life I thought was real. I touched the framed picture of Maria Carter and me on our wedding day, my once beloved bride in her white dress, beaming at me like I was her whole world. Now, it seemed like a fantasy pinned to a cheap wooden frame. When she finally came home, well after midnight, I didn't confront her. I pretended to be asleep. But in the darkness, I listened to her footsteps ascend the stairs, the hush of her breathing. My mind conjured every detail of what she'd been doing with Lauren Pierce. That sick feeling in my stomach churned again. Time passed with excruciating slowness, each day a silent war zone. My wife carried on her affair brazenly, and I honed my plan. I'd siphoned enough money that if I left, I'd be okay. But I needed to make sure she felt my absence. One night, she picked a fight. She asked me why I was so sullen, so distant, as if it were my fault. She shook her head, adopting a tone of condescension. "John, you're just not present anymore," she said, looking bored. "Why can't we at least talk about this calmly?" "Calmly?" I whispered. "Maria Carter, you betrayed me for years. You lied about our son's paternity. And now you're continuing all of it. And you want calm." She sniffed, eyes glazing over. "You always make it sound so simple. People change." We drifted apart. I clenched my jaw. "I gave you my entire life." She just shrugged. No tears, no regret. The conversation ended with me stepping out into the cool night air, pacing the driveway under a flickering porch light. My mind was on fire, but my voice never rose above a subdued growl. Then the moment came. I found them, Maria Carter and Lauren Pierce, together in our bedroom. I'd left the office early. Didn't even intend to walk in on them. I just wanted to pick up some documents I'd forgotten. I pushed the door open. There they were, locked in an embrace on my bed, clothes partially undone, my wife's hair tousled, her blouse hanging off one shoulder. Lauren's hand pressed against Maria Carter's waist. Both of them froze when they saw me. For a second, the world went silent. My breath stuttered, going ragged again. I couldn't tear my eyes away. Maria Carter's shirt was unbuttoned enough to reveal the lacy trim of her bra, and Lauren was leaning over her, hair falling across her face. They looked exposed, caught mid-infidelity. We just stood there, a tableau of betrayal. Finally, Maria Carter pulled the sheet around herself, like a futile shield. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came. Lauren Pierce stared at me defiantly, as if daring me to do something. In that moment, I felt a scorching wave of hate. Part of me wanted to scream, to lash out physically. But instead, I stepped back, letting the door swing shut. My hands shook so violently I could barely walk. Downstairs, I sank onto the sofa, heart racing. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Maria Carter came down first, hair disheveled, blouse hurriedly buttoned, face devoid of shame. Lauren Pierce followed, adjusting the collar of her jacket. She cast me a furtive glance that seemed more annoyed than apologetic. I said nothing. They paused in the hallway. Eventually, Lauren cleared her throat. We'll give you space," she murmured, her voice low and almost mocking. She grabbed her handbag from the entry table. Maria Carter walked over, trying to gauge my expression. "John." I stared at her. My voice came out in a near whisper. "Do you love her?" She hesitated. "This isn't about love. It's about me living my truth." I nearly laughed at how absurd that sounded. "Your truth," I repeated, tasting the bitterness on my tongue. She said nothing else. The two of them left, shutting the door behind them. I sat there listening to the clock tick, counting each second as my soul twisted in agony. My entire life felt like a stage play with the set pieces crumbling. I found myself thinking a lot about the octopus, the creature I once saw in a documentary. How it lures prey in, then wraps its tentacles around it, suffocating every escape route. I told myself I would do the same. No sudden moves, no wild outbursts, just the slow, methodical tightening of my advantage. So I resumed acting like I wanted to salvage something, letting Maria Carter believe I was disarmed, heartbroken, but still clinging to hope. That disoriented her. She probably expected me to rage, to throw her out, or to beg for her love. Instead, I let her see me quiet, watchful. Behind the scenes, I finalized my financial safety net, spoke to lawyers about dividing assets, and found out how to limit any potential claims from her side if we divorced. I put a few prized possessions in storage under a friend's name. Step by step, I withdrew from the joint life we once shared, emotionally, financially, legally. We barely talked. The house felt like a husk. She'd spend nights out, presumably with Lauren Pierce. Sometimes she didn't return until morning. She didn't even bother lying anymore. Meanwhile, my anger smoldered like a coal in my gut, fueling every quiet move I made. I wanted her to feel the ground give way beneath her. I wanted her to realize too late that everything she took for granted, my stability, my finances, my unwavering presence, could vanish in an instant. The final confrontation wasn't a screaming match. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening. We were both in the living room, the atmosphere stifling. She'd just returned from visiting a friend. I sat by the fireplace, scanning some paperwork. She threw her keys on the coffee table. "John," she said, "we can't go on like this." I looked up, studied her face. Her expression was strangely expectant, like she was bracing for a fight. "You're right," I said, voice steady. Maria Carter blinked. "I can't keep living in this tension. If you want to talk about separation." My heart pounded. I forced my features to remain calm. "Separation might be best." She exhaled, shoulders relaxing a bit. "I'm sorry," she said, but it sounded obligatory. I need something different." I nodded, setting my papers aside. "Maria Carter, you can have all the difference you want. I'm done." For the first time, she looked uncertain. "What do you mean?" "I'm leaving," I said simply, rising from the chair. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. And tomorrow, the process starts." She froze. Her mouth opened, closed. "Where are you going?" I shrugged. "Not your concern anymore." She stammered. "But we have assets together. The house. The accounts." My lips twitched in the faintest smirk. "I know. And you'll find it's not as simple as you think." For the briefest moment, I saw actual fear in her eyes. Her calm facade cracked. She seemed to realize something was off. "John, what did you do?" I didn't answer. The dryness in my throat made speech difficult, but I held her gaze. My voice came out steady and cold. "This is what you wanted, right? Freedom, truth, a new life." I felt something hollow in my chest, but also a surge of vindication. "You'll get it." The hush in the room was suffocating. She took a step forward, then paused, confusion marring her features. "We can discuss it." I cut her off with a swift slash of my hand. "No. We're done discussing, Maria Carter." Her eyes flickered with a tinge of panic. "John." I just shook my head, walking past her. When I reached the door, I paused. "I invested 30 years in this marriage. You repaid me by lying about my son, letting me raise him under false pretenses, and carrying on an affair in my own house." My voice was calm, measured, but my words hammered the air. "I won't be your fool anymore." She looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came. Her jaw clenched. I stepped outside. The night air hit me, and I heard my breath again. Ragged, but for a different reason. I got in my car and drove away. I rented a small apartment on the other side of town. That first night, I barely slept, too consumed by adrenaline and the echo of everything I'd left behind. A quiet part of me asked if I'd done the right thing. After all, I'd spent decades building a life with Maria Carter. Was it all to be thrown away? Then I remembered the sight of her with Lauren Pierce, bodies pressed close, the bed sheets twisted around them. I remembered the DNA test results. I remembered the emptiness in Maria Carter's eyes when she admitted he wasn't mine. The numbness set in, smothering any sentimentality. Over the following days, I learned from my lawyer that Maria Carter discovered most of our accounts drained or under my sole control. The house was still in my name, purchased before the marriage. She had some funds of her own, but nowhere near what she probably assumed. I'd set up a scenario where her illusions of freedom came with steep costs. Word reached me through mutual acquaintances that she was furious and panicking. She tried calling. I never answered. Her voicemails went from angry to tearful to coldly resigned. I listened to them in my cramped apartment, the walls echoing with her pleas or her curses, and I felt a strange emptiness. My revenge was in motion. I'd become the octopus, slowly tightening the net. But at night, I wasn't as triumphant as I expected. Lying on a second-hand mattress, staring at a bare ceiling, I felt a void where my sense of self used to be. I had fought for so long to maintain my life and dignity. Now, with everything set in motion, I questioned whether I truly felt better. The phone rang one evening. It was her. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "John," she said, voice trembling. "Please, can we talk?" I paused. "Why?" "Because I need to understand," she whispered. I knew you were angry, but I never thought you'd." I let out a bitter chuckle. "What did you think I'd do, Maria Carter? Let you humiliate me forever?" Her breathing shook through the line. "We shared a life. We have a son." "Don't," I hissed, my own breath catching. "Don't you dare use him to manipulate me." A strangled sob escaped her, or maybe it was frustration. "I never meant to hurt you like this," she said, each word a forced apology. I felt so trapped. So, "Stop," I said, pressing my lips together. "You did what you did. Now you pay the consequences." The silence, thick as lead, settled. Then she hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, feeling no triumph, only a dull ache. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. She tried to bargain, threatened to reveal secrets about me. Secrets I wasn't even aware she had. It didn't matter. The legal documents were solid, and I left her with scraps compared to what she might have gotten if I'd been Maeve. As for my son, I couldn't look him in the eye. He was grown now, in his 20s, living in another city. I debated telling him the truth, but decided not to. It wasn't his fault, and I didn't want to break his sense of identity. That choice weighed on me, but I saw no advantage in shattering him too. Meanwhile, I heard that Lauren Pierce's salon was thriving, that she and Maria Carter were still together, or at least that's what the rumor mill said. Perhaps they'd made it official. Maybe she'd moved in with Lauren. I didn't care to know the details. I'd done everything I set out to do. I destroyed the illusions we had built, took back the power she'd stolen from me, and left her to face the wreckage. Yet the finality of it all was strangely hollow. I'd reclaimed myself, but the man I found underneath was battered, a husk of who I used to be. I realized I'd paid for this revenge with pieces of my own soul, and I couldn't get them back. Months later, I revisited our old lakeside cabin. I'd held onto it in the settlement, a small victory I'd insisted on. It was off-season, the weather chilly, the sky overcast. I parked the car, walked down the winding path, hearing the crunch of gravel beneath my shoes. My breath condensed in the cold air. Inside, everything smelled of dust and memories. The old couch, the chipped coffee table, the slightly musty air. It all evoked better times. I eased myself onto the couch, closed my eyes. In my mind, I saw Maria Carter's younger self, laughing as we grilled on the deck. I saw our son as a boy, jumping into the water, squealing with delight. I saw me, proud, content, oblivious. I sat there for hours, letting the cold sink into my bones. Then, as twilight approached, I stood and walked the deck. The lake stretched out, gray and placid, with a light breeze rippling the surface. I leaned on the railing, focusing on my breathing. It was quieter now, more controlled. I thought about what I'd gained and lost. I'd avenged myself, proven I wasn't a doormat, reclaimed my finances, my pride. But it came at the cost of every illusion I once cherished. The love I thought was unbreakable had been a lie, and in exposing it, I'd shattered the foundation of my own life. Yes, I'd left Maria Carter devastated, financially squeezed, socially disgraced in some circles. But I carried the weight of that final betrayal too. Maybe that was the cruel justice of it all. In punishing her, I realized vengeance doesn't heal. It just leaves you with emptiness where your rage used to be. The last light of day faded behind the pines, painting the water in streaks of dull silver. I inhaled the crisp air, letting it fill my lungs. Then I exhaled, slow and steady, feeling the chill in my chest. I thought about everything that had happened, the affair, the humiliations, the moment I saw them entwined on my bed. I felt that final pang in my gut, the remnant of old heartbreak. Then, quietly, I stepped back inside and locked the door behind me. I'd done what I came to do, reclaim a piece of myself. Now, in the stillness of that dark cabin, I felt alone, but strangely calm. Even the hollow place in my chest had a certain numb peace to it. I was finished being her fool, finished living a life built on lies. I set my bag down, took off my coat, and slid open the back door to let some fresh air in. The night was eerily still. No birds, no insects, just the quiet hush of water lapping at the shore. A sense of finality washed over me. I realized I wasn't sure who I was anymore, without Maria Carter, without that comfortable, if false, identity. But maybe that was okay. Maybe we only find ourselves in the wreckage of what we thought we knew. Sinking into the old armchair by the window, I stared out at the moonlit lake. My breath sounded softer, calmer. I stayed like that for a long time, letting the hush of the evening hold me. Eventually, I closed my eyes, exhausted by everything that had led me here. In the morning, I'd figure out what came next. For now, I just let the silence cradle me, acknowledging that vengeance had come with a cost. I'd become the man she feared. And in the end, the only one paying that price was me.